Film study, the what, the how, and the why. Many of you guys ask us, what is film study? What are we doing here? And I couldn't tell actually in detail because this department of Till, our MMA coach. So we have him here now, and we want to introduce what we do at our film study sessions, what you can get from it, why do you need it. So I give the word to Till. Maybe you can introduce yourself real quick, and then we can talk about why film study sessions are so important to fighters and what we are actually doing there.
Okay, hi, nice talking to you again. I'm Till Stritter from Germany. I'm currently based in Bremen at Elevate Gym, and I'm an MMA coach. Um, Here I'm coaching, of course, you know him underneath, amongst other fighters. I coach Jamie Cordero, an Octagon Pro, but also in my everyday life, I coach kids, hobbyists, amateurs. I'm coaching like everyone, basically stepping on the mat. I'm cornering a lot of fights. I'm obviously watching a lot of film. Basically, I'm trying to get all kinds of experience and information that I can get, and then I will just throw myself in my work again and get more information. Basically, I'm very curious about how people learn and the science behind that. And also, I have a little project with Constructor University that's called Brain Battle, where neuroscience, film, and AI come together. And yeah, so I'm spending a lot of time basically trying to understand better what I'm doing and get better on what I'm doing.
Yeah. So Till, would you say that you have a different approach to training than other coaches in the space?
Mm, I don't know if I have this in general, but what I do is I'm not doing stuff because I always did it that way. I will always, and this is where we come to the point with the film study again, check if what I'm doing is actually working and always check back on the people. I will center my coaching very much around the athletes and not about what I know and what I can show. It's really much my eyes on what the athletes are doing, what skills they are developing, uh, if it is actually working, and where they need what kind of help. Basically, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Then I'm not stuck with one particular way to do a particular thing. I really have to figure out if it's really, really working in the end. The effect has to be there.
Yeah,
Does it
I
answer the
think
question?
definitely this is really,
Okay.
really good because this is also what Athletics stands for. We want to work with the athletes and don't want to show off like, yeah, I can do this and that because it's always about the athlete. He has to perform in the octagon. So all the coaching should be centered around him. You said you will come back to the film study, but before we talk about that, for the people who don't know what film study actually is, can you explain it real quick?
Yeah, well, what is film study in general? Well, basically you watch film and then you make sense out of it. That's like the really, really easy way to say it. Um, Well, you can watch any kind of competition footage of your own, of your guys, of people that you like, that you want to study, people that can do stuff that you want to understand better or that you want to learn. As a coach, probably you want to film your room and watch what's happening in the room. You could as well film yourself coaching and monitor your own coaching and reflect on that. Like basically, like what is film study? You put on film, you watch it, you put stop, you press stop, you press play, you pull it back and forth, you change the speed. Probably you see stuff. You could discuss this with someone. You take notes. That's what film study is in general. It's a method that you can use, and it's a super important tool to me.
Now, why should athletes use this tool to improve their skill?
Because it's a big potential that's just for free and that's available all the time. You don't even need a training partner. You can do it everywhere, anytime. uh, and you can learn basically a lot. Like everybody has a smartphone nowadays, everybody has some sort of internet connection, and let's say every fight in the history of the world that happened, yeah, in the history of the world, maybe not, but that happened like the last 50 years, 60 years, you will find online somehow. So, yeah, you can just pick out stuff. You can see what other people did well. You could pay attention why they succeeded or how they built their game, how they dealt with different situations, where they went wrong, which tactics were not going well, which mistakes people maybe did in what moment, and that stuff. And you get a basically, you can get a better understanding about fighting in general, the dynamics of a fight as well. Because it's not always like, oh, I do this, and then you do this, and this happens. It's mostly many things happen at the same time and having a very, very own particular dynamic, and that to understand, well, there's many, many ways, but it will help you to get a lot better.
Okay, you said there are many, many ways. Can you break it down? Like, what is your approach to film study with our athletes at MM Athletics? And maybe when can we can go to the
Mm.
part where we talk about what people can do on their own. But let's start with what's your approach to film study with our athletes? We have 2 to 4 film study sessions normally in a month. Like, what are you doing with our athletes? What's your approach?
Well, the film study sessions with the athletes at MM Athletics, I love them so much because what we're doing is we're meeting online, we're watching the same film, and we're discussing. Basically, we're gathering many eyes and many heads and many perceptions and many thoughts, and we exchange about it. And this is where I also see a big value, to be honest, for myself. We are going through a film. Most of the time, I'm proposing something. I will have a particular idea, maybe what I want to show, but this is only what I see. And what's so interesting is it doesn't matter how experienced someone is. Some people bring a lot of knowledge and they have crisp vocabulary and they know stuff and they watch for some little things. And sometimes you have the people, they feel like, oh, I'm a complete beginner. I don't know stuff. Can I even talk here? And I say, yes, sure, because your opinion and what you see is interesting to me. And it's always something that maybe I missed out on, or it gives another meaning to a situation that we are watching. And oftentimes it is like that, that I'm like seeing some stuff and I'm constructing how I would explain the situation and what I think is important. And the person says, yeah, but what about this and this? And I think like, okay, mind blown, cool. So what are we doing? Yeah. Well, there's in a living situation. A film maybe just is a recording of a situation that had more perspectives. So we only have one recording of something that already happened. But there's still so many ways where you put your attention and your focus on and how you would explain stuff. And doing this together is very, very cool to me. And I love it for forever. Yeah.
Okay, so this actually answered another question, like, whom is the film study for? So it's basically for everybody. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, but everything you said so far is very abstract, maybe to the listener. Can you give an precise example of maybe one situation? Like, what can the fighters take away from the session? How does it translate to the mats?
Uh, well, obviously, it's very hard to say in general what exactly translate for whom to which mat, but um, you look at stuff and you see how somebody starts a fight, for example. You see how someone builds up his attacks. You see how the opponent deals with it and what the opponent shows to it. And like in the easiest way, this gives you an inspiration what to try. Oftentimes we discuss about what behavior somebody showed and what was basically on what we can see the result for this particular situation. And then people come up with, yeah, but what was important that it worked? And then they look for stuff, and then they see, okay, maybe I could also focus on this and this. Oh, okay, he manipulated the attention of the guy in this and this way. I could also try this. Okay, in order to effectively disengage, he did this and this. Oh, okay, maybe this would be something for me. So, does this answer the question a bit?
A little bit. I think I have a more concrete answer actually, because I'm also attending the film study sessions when I have time. And every time, normally we go out with something I can do on my own. For example, what can I do if I'm cornered at the cage? Like, where do I have to move? What can I do? Um, and it can also be some techniques. The thing is, your brain doesn't have the time to process all the things in sparring. But when you have the film study sessions, your brain has enough time to gather all the information. Of course, the translation to actual action is not there at the moment, but your brain can remember certain situations. And I think this is a big problem in training where you train like one specific thing all the time. Situation A, for example, maybe situation B and C, but not D, E, F, and so on. And through watching the film study sessions, you see all those different kind of situations where you can apply, for example, one technique that you already know, and your brain makes a connection. Okay, now I can do it, and you don't even think about it. I had this for a specific judo throw. I remember that one of your athletes from Münster, I think, showed his footage, and I could land the exact same throw in a similar situation. I never
Mm.
thought about it before, and I never
Mhm.
trained for it. So it was mind blowing to me that it worked. And
Uh,
um, m- maybe this is a more concrete
yeah,
example. It's probably
yeah,
just a
that's
small
a cool
thing,
one. Yeah.
um, but people underestimate the effect of just watching situations because it's
Yeah.
not about the technique itself. If the context is missing in your brain, you won't apply it in that situation. This is
Mm,
a lot of things I compare um, to the military because this is my background, and we did the same thing. At least I did as an instructor to manufacture more situations because people, for example, already knew how to um, deal with a malfunction on a weapon, like in a plain setting. But once the setting changed, they forgot to do it. It's crazy, and I think we have to do the same in martial arts. So your brain needs to know a lot of situations, so it's more flexible and adaptable.
mm,
And um, I think film study really helps with this too.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like I would like to comment on a few things that you said.
Yeah,
First one I wanted to say, like, I found it very cool that you brought up the thing with my guy who was showing his training footage, because that was something very cool. We were like a little group on this day. And I think we watched some film, we discussed some stuff, and something came up, and then we watched into a video of the last practice. And this was also very cool because then you could use the collective to discuss a little bit what happened and make sense out of it. Obviously, you took something away for yourself. He also, yeah, got at least some information, a proposal how you could, how he, what to understand better what happened, and got a proposal for what he could try the next time somebody goes at him like this. This was very cool. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing is like when you were bringing up like the thing that people miss out in practice, or like then they try to practice a very specific solution for a dynamic life and alive situation that will probably not be exactly like that, and then they don't find it. Like this is exactly when you ask me about how I approach training. This is what I'm not doing. I'm not proposing super specific solutions that people have to repeat until they throw up. I will make people solve the same problem over and over again and again and again. And of course, I can constrain it so it's not too broad. Yeah. So that it's really centered about something. And if they miss out a solution, I could propose them something very specific. It's not like never giving some information. But the very cool thing is that people are solving problems over and over again in the context that they need. And I think that's also where it comes together with your military example. If you put this together in a context that's not what you need, then well, the skill is not just there where you need it, right? You practice something else, but you did not practice what you actually need.
Yeah,
Then
it's not transferable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And this is something like if you're so much caught up in the brain, like this is all very conscious or not. I think that's a discussion for another day or so. But I can really yeah, go with that. That it really puts stuff in context, and it's very much about solving the problem. And I'm super happy to hear that this kind of information and also like a little bit the visual image obviously helped you to see stuff in the situation that you came and try and then you figure out, and that's really cool. Like every piece of film, also instructionals, like Francesco Fonte said last weekend, it's information. Every piece of information is good. And then you have to put it into a live setting and then you have to figure out, and that's where you get your skill. But the film study also serves the purpose that you get all this inspiration, that information, these ideas, and you also have a visual image and you can also imagine how you're doing it. And yeah, it helps a lot. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think I have one last comment to that before we finish this
Mm,
podcast up with some tips on how to do it on your own. But I always thought, and maybe the listeners want to hear another podcast episode about that because I think it could be an important topic, that input matters more than output. That doesn't mean that you don't need output, but if your input is smaller than your output, you miss inspiration for problem solving.
mm,
You have to have seen a lot of things first and then try to apply it. Because if you work on limited information, your output can't be that good and so big. You're limited in your
mm,
viewpoint. Like imagine you're a five-year-old kid. You don't know much about the world, so you can't produce a lot of output. When you're 20, 30 in your life, you can do a lot more because you have seen more. And I think it's the same principle. It just doesn't apply to
mm,
um fighting, but it applies to your whole life. So I think
mm.
this could be a cool topic to talk about. We don't have to
Actually,
go in
yeah.
detail, but I would,
Actually, but I want to say one sentence to that at least,
yeah.
okay? One sentence I want to say, like, I would not like oppose this, like information or output, because the question is all the input you get, how do you get it, right? And it's not always like I'm only a brain without a body, and then I'm getting input like in Matrix, and then I know stuff, and that's the better the
No.
stuff I know. And I do stuff like the concept that I follow, and really, I'm not an expert, and I'm not a scholar. And if you want to read the science behind that, there's much better people. It's just like I'm very curious about it. But the idea that's very central for me is perception action coupling. Like, how do kids get information? No, they don't. They don't do that on an intellectual way, and you never know about what's the actual state of their cognition. It doesn't play a role. They interact with their environment, so they get information. So they interact with the environment, so they get information. And that's basically what I think. And there's a lot of interesting science to it. People do. And how they get information. So for me, I would not oppose this. But what's true is, without input, output will be hard. Like there's yeah, also um, dynamic going back and forth between action and perception. And I think that's very interesting. And that's maybe a topic for another
Yeah,
podcast.
I totally agree. Now we're at the
Yeah,
point where we talk about the
yeah,
ratio of input and output and how to couple
yeah.
them. So we are already going into detail. I think this is another episode. So to wrap this podcast up, what are some tips for the people who are listening right now who maybe can't attend our film study sessions or are just interested in it? How can they approach film study at home? Can you give them some tools on how to start? What should they do?
Well, first, go to YouTube, put on a video, or film something in your class, sit down, watch the video.
How
Uh,
should they choose? How should they choose? What is important to them?
don't overthink it. Just start somewhere. Because if you go like, what's exactly the fight that I have to study? Yeah, well, you will never know the answer. You can just start with something that somehow catches your attention, or you figure out there's a certain problem that you're not solving in your class, right?
Hmm.
For example, if you're doing jiu-jitsu, there's a tool, it's called Outlier Database. I don't have anything to do with them, but I think it's very great. And then you see like, oh, at this position, I always struggle. I don't know why my half guard sucks so bad. I get passed all the day. People flatten me out. I don't know how to get any kind of connection. So you go to Outlier Database and you sort of look for the position. You get tons of instructionals and film. And yeah, then you can just start watching something. You can also, if you struggle with something like, oh, I don't know, I get hit with jabs all day. I don't know how to defend jabs. Yeah, well, then just Google it, go on YouTube. Is it the best study material? Who cares? Just start somewhere. And of course, if you know that there's people that have good knowledge, why not asking?
Hmm.
Just ask someone. And just start somewhere. Sometimes you don't even need to have a fixed topic. This would be already like, oh, okay, I have a certain problem and now I take ownership and now I look for solutions. But everybody today on a smartphone is watching stuff all the time. Like the question is just not how you are getting input. The question maybe is more how are you going more for specific input? Because you watch reels all the time on Instagram, you watch YouTube all the time, you watch highlights. And if you don't have any idea, yeah, well, then go watch your highlight reel. And then you're like, whoa, he punched him. How cool. And then probably take the highlight reel, watch it back and forth, and try to understand a little bit this little sequence already. And then you can just maybe look for the whole fight and then you try to make sense out of it. How did it end up there?
Okay.
Probably.
Hmm. One thing I remember, we always watch without tone, like no volume. Um, so what are some recommendations about volume, about speed, about going back and forth? Do you have like some tips for that, how to approach the study
Hmm.
itself?
Okay. Let's say more the way we do this and more the technical part. I turn off the commentators and the volume because for just watching the movements, this is basically what you're doing, the interaction of the movement and what it creates. Um, this is not important. It's a lot of noise that we're just taking out, if you want so. And if you want to think yourself what you are seeing and how you make sense of it, and somebody is telling you all the time what you are seeing already, this is disturbing a little bit. So it could be also interesting to later on see how the commentator viewed it. What I'm always interested in is to turn the volume up if the corner is talking because I want to see the interaction between the coach and the athlete. But yeah, let's say also, but this is my personal thing. Like I think, let's say 70% of the commentators are full of shit. So it's also not something that I need, but also like even if they have like super good ideas and they're like super on point with stuff, like, and I would agree in my opinion, which is also just my opinion, then this is maybe not helping to make your own sense at first. So probably first watch without tone, then use the stop button and replay buttons as much as possible. You can just with your arrows on the keyboard, you can just play back and forth, mostly 10 seconds, 15 seconds. You can change the speed, and this is super easy. You get used to it in a few seconds. Just try it out one time. And then, yeah, look for situations where something changes in the dynamic of the fight. This is mostly the first task I give. You know, we are watching not the whole thing, we're watching round by round, maybe 1 minute by 1 minute, because even in 5 minutes is very long time. So sometimes we only watch the first minute, and then I ask people to note timestamps. Like you see the fighter starting, then you see somebody's initiating a movement, you see somebody's reacting to it. Well, let's say it looks like you never know exactly, okay? But you find your way. Then you see how somebody is intercepting something, getting back initiative, something is happening, and you feel like this is a change in the energy, however you want to describe it. And then you note down these timestamps. And then we gather together, we discuss those timestamps, we play back and forth. Yeah, and then it's where the magic happens. And most of the time, then we see what we're gonna do next.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is enough information for the first episode. So, thanks to everybody that listened to the podcast. I hope you could get a better idea what film study is and how you can approach it. If you need some help with that, feel free to contact us on Instagram, mmathletics underscore, yeah, mmathletics underscore coaching. And yeah, maybe you want to participate in our film study sessions. We can help you with that too. Just message us. My English is still pretty rough, but it gets better every day. And like you guys probably noticed, we will switch our whole company to English because we want to help fighters all around the globe. I think this will be quite nice, get more input from the fighters, more experience. And yeah, see you at the next episode. We already discussed the topic that we want to talk about next, and I also have some other podcasts lined up, maybe some German podcasts in between and transition phase because I found some athletes with some cool stories that can help you. Thanks, Till, for coming here today, and I hope I see you guys in my DM box or maybe in our coaching.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Looking forward to hear you next time.
Yeah,
Bye,
let's talk
guys.
next time.